Come on in, welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about 5 great Survivor dads in honor of Father's Day. I covered 5 of my favorite Survivor moms for Mother's Day, so it's only fair that some of Survivor's best dads get their moment too. Today, there's no real rhyme or reason to the rankings. This isn't like some definitive best dads list or anything. That would be a weird thing to rank. It's just 5 non-toxic kings spanning all eras of the game. Some are Survivor legends, some are pretty deep cuts, and all have that classic dad energy. Get these dudes to a grill. All that said, let's count down 5 great Survivor dads in honor of Father's Day. At number 5 is Butch in Survivor Amazon. Straight up, Butch has to be one of the most wholesome human beings to ever play this game. At the very least, the most wholesome dude on his season, although low bar. Amazon was the first of 3 seasons divided along gender lines. It's good that Butch was here to keep these guys in line. They really went out of their way to make their first all-male tribe a frat house. I mean, I'm surprised this camp didn't come equipped with a beer bong and a Boondock Saints poster on the wall somewhere. I've often said that Amazon is Survivor's horniest season, and yeah, basically every member of Tombaki openly fantasizes about Jenna, Heidi, or Shauna at one point. Look, the proof is right there on tape. That's what you were thinking about. You can't deny it. There are 2 exceptions to the overt horniness at Camp Tombaki, though. One is Matt Myers over here, whose fantasies are unconventional, and the other is Butch. School Principal Butch is just here to root on his tribe like he's a dad at a Little League game. He really wants to make those young men believe in themselves. See? When they win, he congratulates them. When they lose, he's there to pick them up. At every turn, Butch is here to bring out the best in his tribe mates. When Christy is swapped over to Tombaki, Butch goes out of his way to accommodate her disability and make her feel included in the campfire conversations. He's just a super stand-up guy. At one point, Butch has a front row seat to one of the most infamous moments in Survivor history, when Jenna and Heidi drop their tops for some peanut butter. And where is Butch looking?
I'm not looking.
Butch, you're missing Survivor history. This is like Sandra having a front row seat to the most hyped season of all time, then just dipping out halfway through, except for perverts. Of course, we can't talk about Butch without mentioning his bizarre late-game obsession with collecting firewood. The thing about Butch is, he's a third boot that somehow stumbled forward all the way to the final 4. His brain just isn't wired for a 37-day run in this game. Naturally, he begins collecting obscene amounts of firewood to make himself useful, dropping increasingly bizarre dadisms about the wood's quality all along the way.
Ooh, it's dry.
You know what this camp needs, Butch? More firewood. Dude collected more firewood recreationally in Amazon than Natalie, Amber, Danny, and Ethan did in a firewood collecting challenge in Winners at War. Unfortunately, Butch's firewood collection ended up burning down the camp, and he was voted out shortly thereafter. But some say he's still out there collecting firewood to this very day. At number 4 is Roxroy from Survivor 42. If you could distill suburban dad energy down into a single guy on this show, it would be Roxroy. The jokey complaints about his nagging wife straight out of a 90s sitcom, the cargo shorts that dip down just below the knee. Can someone check this guy's shoes? Are those New Balances? Roxroy is a man out of time on Survivor. The guy seriously came into a reality competition show on its 42nd season and tried to play like he was on season 3. Complete with an overbearing focus on building the shelter, pitching an all-male alliance, and complaining about the new generation's work ethic. Yeah, Roxroy, with inflation, the value of coconuts and palm fronds have lost like 48% of their value since you were in school, so excuse Gen Z if they phone it in. Nevertheless, Ica needed a dad figure, and so Roxroy stepped up. These kids need some structure in their life. Literally. Roxroy is gonna build one. While everyone else is off scheming and playing Survivor, there's Roxroy, manning the grill and building furniture. One of my favorite qualities in Rox is that he's always a super supportive guy. After the first immunity challenge when Zack and Swathy blow the puzzle, Roxroy is the first one out there to hug them. It's a genuinely sweet blink and you'll miss it moment. In fact, in almost every team challenge in the pre-merge, Roxroy is the first one to his team win or lose. Undoubtedly, Roxroy's biggest moment in the game was when he was sent to exile at the merge. And I'm sorry, but it is objectively funny that the person selected to go and make a strategic decision that will ripple throughout the rest of the game is by far the least strategic player of the season. Like, that's just hilarious, you know? If the hourglass is gone in seasons 43 and beyond, we probably have Roxroy to thank. What else does Rox do when he gets to exile? Build a shelter, of course. When Jeff shows up to tell him he has a major, game-defining decision to make on which merge team gets immunity, a decision which will impact every player in the game, his relationships with them, and his own safety, Roxroy couldn't care less. Yeah, that's cool, Jeff, but check out this new addition I just put in on the shelter. Roxroy is that rare player nowadays that comes to Survivor almost 100% for the journey. In his tribe, he just wanted to build his shelter and support his team. On Exile, he just wanted to soak in the environment and solitude. Man, this island is amazing. My wife isn't anywhere in sight. At number 3 is Roger from Survivor Australia. You really gotta love old Kentucky Joe. Not only is he an underratedly good player, but he's also one of the few members of Kucha to remain well-liked in the fandom throughout the years. This is a tribe that is increasingly problematic by the day. Roger is probably best remembered for his father-daughter relationship with Elizabeth, a friendship that lasted the entire game and ultimately ended with him falling on the sword to get her one round further. I'd argue that Roger and Elizabeth were probably Survivor's first real, fan-favorite, universally beloved alliance of two ever. It's amazing how iconic this pairing is. Haskell and Nalia could never. Roger started on Kucha and was the resident tribe workhorse at camp, building shelters and starting fires by, burning his Bible. That's how great Roger is. He could burn his Bible on camera, and Middle America still loved him. As the tribe's resident old guy, Roger was almost always at least brought up as a boot target when Kucha went to tribal. But this tribe was so messy that someone else consistently stepped in the line of fire and spared him. And thank you, Deb and Kimmy.
We got enough rocks here, too. We could build a pretty decent shelter just using rocks.
Roger and Elizabeth's father-daughter bond truly kicked off at the merge. You see, the Kucha tribe as a whole was bonded together by Mike Skupin falling in the fire on day 17. This was an incredibly traumatic event for everyone, particularly the fire which had to directly touch Mike Skupin. The tragic medical evacuation united the 5 remaining members of Kucha together, and they needed a Kucha to bring home the win for Mike. Ooh, yeah, about that. As Kucha is whittled down one by one, Roger and Elizabeth become closer and closer. He grows into a genuine guardian angel for her, trying to keep the target off her back and on anyone else's. The development of Roger and Elizabeth's friendship is one of the few interesting things to happen in the long slog that is Australia's post-merge. What, you're gonna tell me that Keith chasing crickets is better? One thing I've always admired about Roger is his openness with his emotions. He's not afraid to be vulnerable. In the AIM chat reward on the vintage iMac, which now there's a very 2000s image, Jeff asks Roger if he's tearing up chatting with his family, and Roger just confidently says, yeah.
That little tear in your eye? Yes, it is. Yep.
Wow, this is way more emotional than whatever's going on in Keith's chat. Roger and Elizabeth are so close that by the end of the game, when they're the only 2 members of Kucha left, he asks Tina and Colby to vote him out instead of her, arguing that he's already achieved everything he wants in life and that she needs the money and the opportunity more, but only if they don't tell her that he asked for her to be spared. It's genuinely one of the most bittersweet goodbyes in the history of the show. Roger's an absolute king and probably the best member of a tribe that was, for a long time, one of the most beloved tribes in history. Not so much now anymore, though. this tribe aged worse than an instant messaging reward. At number 2 is Keith in Survivor San Juan del Sur and Survivor Cambodia. You know my answer to who is your favorite Survivor character of all time probably changes hourly, but the person I would say most often would probably be Keith. From a purely TV character standpoint, this guy is up there with Coach, Courtney, Tyson, and Sandra as the funniest person to ever play Survivor. From the spitting to his shocking ball savviness.
Yeah, ball savviness.
To the revelation that he calls his wife Big D, literally everything Keith ever says or does is simultaneously heartwarming and hilarious. And that extends to his relationship with his nugget-loving, tongue-wagging son, Wes. Keith played against his son Wes in San Juan del Sur, which pit family members and loved ones against each other. Keith and Wes have this really adorable, playful rivalry that just comes across as so genuine. The love they have for each other is just really apparent. You can tell Keith is super proud of his son, and he expresses it in the only way a guy named Keith from Keithville who lives on Keith Road really could.
Wes is a good kid. He ain't been in jail yet, you know.
If that isn't a glowing review, I don't know what is. Their relationship really comes into focus post-merge, when the tribes merge and Keith and Wes can finally play the game together. Finally, it's the moment we've been waiting for. The titans of this game can come together, seize control, and run this show. And Keith and Wes are there, too. The thing you gotta understand about Keith is, he's just out here trying his best. Sure, he forgets his own son's birthday on the island. Sure, he accidentally idles out his own son after accidentally giving away his alliance's secret plan to regain control of the game, leading to the accidental elimination of all his allies. But that's just part of the Keith Nail charm. Incredibly, Keith would stumble backwards into the finale of a season and come a hair away from winning the game after failing to vote correctly like 80% of the time, not once, but twice. Not only did Keith make the Final Four of San Juan del Sur after his entire alliance was destroyed because of him, but he practically did it again in Cambodia. Yet again, Keith showed up, spat, and stumbled forward in one of the most chaotic and high-level strategic games Survivor's ever seen. Like, there's Fishback over there running complex equations in his head on how to vote, and then there's Keith practicing his golf swing. One of the most perplexing questions in all of Survivor history is Keith a good Survivor player? He came extremely close to winning the game twice, and yet he's voted correctly like hardly ever. Keith's game is the equivalent of when you spend 6 months carefully learning inputs in a fighting game, then your friend comes over and just button mashes their way to victory. Game aside, it's probably Keith's warm relationship with Wes that is my favorite part of him as a Survivor character. There's just a fondness for one another in a bigger way than any blood versus water relationship in either season. Spit one out for all the dads out there doing their best. At number 1 is Jeremy from Survivor San Juan del Sur, Survivor Cambodia, and Survivor Winners at War. When you think of family men on Survivor, Jeremy is probably the person most fans would visualize first. I don't think anyone has ever been so defined by their love for their family in Survivor history than Jeremy. From playing with his wife, to dropping a baby bombshell at Final Tribal, to having the most excited reaction to seeing his family in loved ones visit history. Let's start with his time in San Juan del Sur, where Jeremy played opposite his wife, Val. Jeremy and Val competed against one another in the very first Loved Ones duel this season, immediately pit against each other moments after the game began. You can see the family man side of Jeremy right off the bat when he beats Val in the duel and is genuinely really upset. Of course, Probst is probably wetting his britches in excitement at the blood versus water theme immediately paying off with high emotions. Now Val was not long for this game thanks to a baffling and wild double idol bluff that scholars are still trying to wrap their heads around to this very day. But she did return in Cambodia's Loved Ones visit to drop a bombshell on Jeremy. She has 3 idols. Oh, and also she's pregnant with their first son. Jeremy carefully holds on to this information until Final Tribal Council, when he drops a major revelation on the jurors. Val has 4 idols. Oh, and also he's going to have a son. Well, if he didn't already have this one wrapped up, now he does. Jeremy's story arc really peaks for me at the Winners at War loved ones visit, though. This was already the best and most oversized loved ones visit ever. It took up literally half the episode. And Survivor obviously saved the best for last. You know you're gonna get a big reaction out of Jeremy when he sees his family. Seeing the whole Collins clan come out to Fiji and Jeremy's uncontrollable excitement is just the best loved ones visit moment ever, bar none. Except maybe Kat describing her close relationship with her cousin.
We work together, we live together, we breathe together.
Wait, you what together? Was Jeremy particularly fatherly in any of his 3 games? Not really. He's a youngish guy, and both Cambodia and Winners at War had a much higher average age than a typical season. But Jeremy's notable as the Survivor dad because his story is so tied to his family, and he's constantly reminding us that they are the motivator for him in all 3 of his games. I'd imagine many survivors play for their family, but with Jeremy, it's such an intrinsic part of his storyline that no one else could be number 1. And you know what? It's really sweet that they had 1 kid for each idol Val had in the game. Got nothing else for ya. Happy Father's Day to all the dads and father figures out there. You're all Keith nailing it. Until next time, don't get idled out.